Hi everyone. Tonight I'm going to be talking about agricultural exceptionalism in a chronological format. Hope you enjoy. Agricultural exceptionalism is the historical legal practice of treating agriculture differently from other industries. This is especially true in regards to minimum wage, overtime pay, and collective bargaining power. This practice has been around for almost a century, however, the term is fairly new. The beginning of agricultural exceptionalism is typically considered to be in the 1920s to 30s. The first few laws that explicitly discuss differences in labor laws include the Capper-Volstead Act of 1922, the Fair Labor Standard Act of 1938, and the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. All of these acts established a precedent for fewer protections for farm workers. The National Labor Relations Act of 1935, Social Security Act of 1935, and Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 all excluded farm workers from legal protections surrounding minimum wage, overtime pay, unemployment insurance, and collective organizing and bargaining, and occupational health. Before the 1930s, the U.S. did not have a set minimum wage or overtime requirements. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 set a federal minimum wage that was established due to the economy from the Great Depression. This would, quote, stabilize the economy and create a standard of living that would protect the health and well-being of all U.S. workers, end quote. Except for farm workers, of course. This act did not have standards for small breaks or breaks for meals, and as of the writing of the article where I got this, there is still no federal law mandating for lunch breaks or rest breaks. The Capper-Volstead Act of 1922 gave the farmers and ranchers the right to join together in cooperative associations and agricultural producer organizations limited to antitrust immunity. This act allows family farmers to compete with larger organizations. Rural Electrification Act of 1936 was passed as a part of the New Deal by President FDR. This allowed the federal government to make low-cost loans to farmers who had created nonprofit cooperatives to bring electricity to rural America. This was passed to give rural Americans a fair chance. A 1966 amendment to the Fair Labor Standards Act extended minimum wage protections to farm workers on large farms, but not small farms. No overtime pay protections were added to this amendment. Right to farm laws of the 1970s, quote, send a message to the public that if they move next to a farmer, they have to accept how he operates, end quote. This is from the then president of the Indiana Farm Bureau in 1987, while he was praising the state's right to farm law. At first glance, this law appears to ensure that farmers, who were there first, could be protected in the face of potential suburban sprawl. However, this is making corporations close to immune because of their, quote, 1-year statute of limitations, end quote. Once an operation, which is very broadly defined, is up and running for a year, it is immune from nuisance suits. This means industrial agricultural operations are protected even if they were developed after a residential family farm was already there. There was a shift after 1980, and this included the Farm Credit System bailout. The Agricultural Credit Act of 1987 was created to address the severe financial crisis in the 1980s, caused by high interest rates, falling land values, and overproduction. This created a stronger farm credit banks and farm credit system insurance corporations, which is similar to the FDIC. This also was part of the Chapter 12 bankruptcy, which was done a few years later. Chapter 12 bankruptcy is a hybrid between Chapter 11 and Chapter 13. Chapter 11 is more suited for large corporate reorganization and is very expensive and complicated. Chapter 13 is for people with smaller debts than those of a farmer, so Chapter 12 is typically what a farmer would use if they needed to declare bankruptcy. There are some environmental protection gaps when it comes to agricultural exceptionalism, including the Clean Water Act, where agricultural operations are able to be exempt from laws regarding water runoff from the operations. This is part of the 1995 Hot Lagoon spill in North Carolina. In Onslow County in 1995, a large hog waste spill led to the passage of the 1995 Swine Farm Sitting Act. This spill was 25 million gallons of untreated hog waste that spilled into the New River. The impact was very significant. It killed over 1,500 fish, created black water, damaged crops, and elevated coliform levels in the river up to extreme levels. COVID-19 Trump-era immigration policy and exemptions are a today picture of agricultural exceptionalism. During the COVID-19 pandemic, immigration crackdowns were occurring in the U.S. However, new exemptions were put in place to streamline the H-2A visa process for agricultural workers. So where are we at today? The Fair Labor Standard Act still contains exceptions for farm workers. Overtime pay is still not protected. It is better than it used to be, but we still have a very long way to go. So what's next? We need to pass overtime laws for farm workers. We need to give some power back to the small farmers and individuals rather than the corporations. Corporations are able to do monopolies and price fixing. That is very hard to stop when there's 4 or 5 big companies owning everything. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope y'all have a great holiday break.